The room was buzzing with excitement and chatter. People had gathered for the school talent show, each hoping to impress the crowd with their skills. Some were singing, others were dancing, and a few were even performing magic tricks. Among them, there was a large, polished piano in the center of the stage. Its black and white keys glimmered under the bright lights, and it seemed to call out to anyone who wanted to play it. A young girl stood at the back of the room, her eyes fixed on the piano. She had always loved music, and the sound of the piano had always made her heart beat faster. But she was not very experienced. She had practiced in her room, alone, dreaming of the day she could play in front of people. Today she had gathered all her courage to try. She took a deep breath and stepped forward, her hands trembling slightly as she approached the instrument. As soon as she reached the piano, the whispers began. Some students snickered, pointing at her. A few laughed openly. "She doesn't even know how to play," one voice said, loud enough for others to hear. "This is going to be funny," another added. The girl froze for a moment, feeling a knot form in her stomach. Her cheeks turned red, and she wondered if she had made a mistake by coming here. But then she remembered why she was doing this. She loved music, and she wanted to share it no matter what anyone thought. She slowly sat down on the piano bench, her fingers hovering above the keys. The laughter continued, and it was hard to ignore. A group of students leaned against the wall, arms crossed, smirking as they waited to see her fail. Their faces were full of doubt and mockery, but the girl took a deep breath and tried to push the fear aside. She told herself that it was okay to be nervous, that it was okay if she was not perfect. She just wanted to play. Her fingers finally pressed down on the keys. The sound that came out was shaky and uncertain, but it was a start. She tried again, slightly more confident this time, but the notes were still uneven. The whispers and laughter seemed louder now. Some people shook their heads and muttered to each other, certain that this would end in disaster. The girl felt a lump in her throat, but she refused to let it stop her. She closed her eyes for a moment, imagining the melody she wanted to create, feeling it in her heart before letting it flow through her fingers. The piano began to respond to her touch. The first few notes were soft and hesitant, but there was a hint of something beautiful in them. She focused on that feeling, letting it guide her. The laughter around her started to fade into the background as she became more immersed in the music. She was no longer just pressing keys. She was telling a story, sharing a piece of herself through each note. Her fingers moved a little more confidently, and the sound started to become smoother. People in the room noticed the change. Some stopped whispering, watching her with curiosity. The smirks and snickers began to fade as they realized that she was not giving up. She was continuing despite the laughter, despite the doubt. She was creating something with courage, and that drew their attention. The young girl did not see them. She only felt the music. Each note she played carried a little bit of her determination, a little bit of her hope, a little bit of her heart. As she played, a small smile formed on her face. She had always loved the piano, but never had she felt this connection before. It was as if the piano was speaking back to her, responding to her emotions, and she could feel it encouraging her to keep going. The crowd, now silent, began to sense the change too. They could feel the sincerity in her playing, the raw emotion that no one could have anticipated. The room that was once filled with laughter and doubt was starting to feel different. There was a quiet respect forming, a sense that something special was happening right before their eyes. Even the students who had been laughing earlier now exchanged glances, their expressions shifting from amusement to surprise. They had expected a performance full of mistakes, maybe even a disaster, but what they were witnessing was not that. The young girl's music was tentative, yes, but it was full of feeling, full of life. It was as if she was painting pictures with the keys, and everyone could see the story she was telling. She continued playing, each note giving her a little more confidence. Her shoulders relaxed, her breathing steadied, and her hands moved more naturally over the keys. The initial fear that had gripped her was slowly melting away, replaced by a quiet determination. She realized that the laughter she had feared so much could not touch her here. The music was hers, and she could make it beautiful no matter what anyone else thought. The audience was captivated. Some were leaning forward, trying to catch every note. Others had their mouths slightly open, as if in disbelief. They had come expecting entertainment, maybe even a little humor at her expense, but instead they were witnessing something real, something heartfelt. The young girl's courage had transformed the atmosphere. Where there was once ridicule, now there was attention, curiosity, and slowly, admiration. The first part of her performance was over in a sense, though she did not stop playing entirely. She had made it past the most difficult moment, the first few notes, the hardest ones to play when so many eyes were watching. She realized that she had survived the fear, survived the laughter, and it had only made her stronger. The piano no longer felt intimidating. It felt like a partner, something that could help her express what she could not say with words. As she lifted her hands from the keys for a brief pause, the room was quiet. No applause yet, just a kind of silent acknowledgement. People were processing what they had just seen, what they had just heard. They were realizing that the girl they had laughed at had something special, something unexpected. It was not just about skill or experience. It was about heart, courage, and the willingness to keep going even when others doubt you. She looked around briefly, her eyes meeting some in the audience. She could see the change in their expressions. The smirks were gone, replaced by surprise, some admiration, and a few nods of approval. It was a small victory, but a significant one. She knew that this was only the beginning, that there was more to come, but she felt a rush of pride. She had faced the ridicule and had not run away. She had taken the first step in sharing her music with the world, and that was worth more than any applause. Her fingers hovered over the keys again, ready to continue. She felt a new energy flowing through her, a combination of nervousness and excitement. She had learned something important in these first few moments, that courage is not the absence of fear, but the choice to move forward in spite of it. And as she pressed the keys once more, she was ready to show the audience what she could do, one note at a time, letting the music tell the story that words could not. The girl's fingers hovered over the keys, feeling the smooth surface beneath her touch. The room had grown quiet after her initial attempt. The laughter that had filled the space earlier was gone, replaced by curious silence. She could feel the eyes of everyone in the room on her, and though that would have made her nervous before, now it felt different. It was not fear that pressed on her shoulders. It was anticipation. She wanted to create something beautiful, something that would make them see her in a new light. She began again, this time more deliberately. Each note she played was slow and careful, almost like she was testing the waters. The sound was soft, tender, and full of emotion. She let herself be guided by the feelings in her heart, rather than by the fear of making mistakes. With each chord, she felt a little more connected to the music. It was as if the piano was responding to her, inviting her to continue and trust herself. A few people in the audience leaned forward slightly, their interest piqued. They had not expected her to continue, and now they were wondering what she would do next. Her fingers moved more confidently now, pressing the keys with a gentle strength that brought out richer, fuller tones. She noticed that some of the students who had been laughing before were now silent, their expressions changing to surprise. The girl could sense a shift in the room. The laughter had turned into quiet curiosity, and that alone gave her courage. The melody she was creating began to take shape. It was not perfect, not flawless, but it was real. It carried the weight of her emotions and the story of her bravery in standing there despite the ridicule. Each note seemed to speak, telling the audience a story without words. They could feel her nervousness, her determination, and the gentle courage that had brought her to this moment. There was a raw honesty in the music that could not be faked, and it was drawing them in. As she played, she felt herself growing more confident. Her fingers moved more freely across the keys, and the melody began to flow naturally. The tremor in her hands lessened, and she could focus entirely on the music. The notes began to fill the room, floating above the audience, capturing their attention. She felt a sense of freedom she had never experienced before. Here in this moment, she was not just a girl being laughed at. She was an artist expressing herself, and the piano was her voice. Some students in the audience exchanged glances. They had expected something funny, perhaps a clumsy performance, but what they were witnessing was something else entirely. They saw a girl who was not just playing notes but telling a story, sharing her heart through music. Even the teachers who had been watching quietly from the sides were impressed by her courage and her developing talent. The room had transformed from a space of ridicule to a space of wonder. The girl closed her eyes for a moment, letting the melody guide her. She thought of all the times she had practiced alone in her room, dreaming of this moment. She remembered the late nights, the mistakes, the frustration, and the small victories. All of that had led her here. She felt a wave of gratitude and joy, and it reflected in the way she played. Her emotions poured into the music, making it richer and more alive. She noticed that some of the audience were leaning forward, their faces softening. The smirks had vanished, replaced by attentive expressions. A few people whispered to each other, clearly impressed. They had underestimated her, but now they were realizing that there was more to this girl than they had imagined. She was showing them that courage and passion could create something powerful, even when skill was still developing. The melody grew more complex as she became more confident. She experimented with small flourishes and gentle variations, letting the music breathe and expand. Each note seemed to hang in the air, lingering in the minds of the listeners. She could feel their engagement, their silent support, and it encouraged her to continue. The piano was no longer just an instrument. It was a bridge between her emotions and the hearts of everyone in the room. As she played, memories of her journey surfaced. She remembered the teasing she had faced at school, the times she had been told she was not good enough, and the moments when she had almost given up. Those memories no longer weighed her down. They fueled her. She played not just for herself, but for every moment of doubt she had ever faced. Every note was a declaration of her resilience, a message that she would not be defined by the laughter of others. Her confidence continued to grow, and with it the music became more fluid. The notes flowed effortlessly, creating a beautiful, heartfelt melody. The audience was captivated. They could sense the honesty in her playing, the courage it took to stand there and express herself. Some people closed their eyes, letting the music wash over them. Others sat in stunned silence, unsure how to react but deeply moved by what they were hearing. The girl noticed that she was smiling as she played. She had discovered something magical in this moment. The joy of creating and sharing, the thrill of connecting with others through music. The piano was no longer intimidating. It was a friend, guiding her, supporting her, helping her tell her story. The melody reflected her emotions perfectly, capturing the nervousness, the courage, the joy, and the determination that had brought her to this stage. She continued to play, losing track of time. The world outside the music faded, leaving only the connection between her, the piano, and the audience. Each note she struck carried her heart and soul, and the audience could feel it. They were no longer spectators. They were participants in her journey, witnessing the transformation of fear into courage, doubt into beauty. The more she played, the more she felt a sense of accomplishment. She had faced the ridicule, the whispers, the doubt, and she had continued. She had taken a risk, and it was paying off in the most unexpected way. The audience's attention and admiration were not the goal. They were a wonderful bonus. The real triumph was within her, the understanding that she could rise above fear and express herself fully. As the melody slowly softened, the room remained silent, caught in the lingering beauty of her music. She paused, taking a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. The initial laughter was gone, replaced by a quiet reverence. She had turned a moment of ridicule into a moment of inspiration, showing everyone that courage and passion could overcome doubt. The girl looked around at the faces in the room. She saw surprise, admiration, and a newfound respect in their eyes. Some of the students who had laughed before now had expressions of awe. The teachers nodded, clearly impressed by her bravery and her developing talent. It was a transformative moment for everyone in the room, but especially for her. She had faced her fears and come out stronger, and the music had been her voice. The first part of her performance had been about survival, about taking the first steps despite the fear. This part was about connection, about letting her emotions flow and touching the hearts of those around her. She realized that music had the power to change the atmosphere, to shift doubt into admiration, and to communicate what words could not. She felt grateful for the piano, for the courage that had brought her here, and for the unexpected audience that had become silent witnesses to her journey. As she lifted her hands from the keys, the room remained quiet, the audience processing what they had just experienced. It was a moment of anticipation, the calm before the next wave of emotion. The girl felt a surge of pride and hope. She had come this far, and she knew that she could continue to grow, to explore, and to share her music. She was ready for the next part of her journey, ready to transform the whispers and doubt into admiration and inspiration. The melody she had created would linger in the room and in the hearts of the audience, a reminder of courage, resilience, and the beauty that comes from following one's passion. As the girl's fingers hovered above the piano keys once more, she felt a surge of determination. The quiet in the room was now a kind of encouragement, and she realized that the audience had shifted from skepticism to curiosity. Each person seemed to hold their breath, waiting to hear the next note, waiting to see what she would do next. The laughter from earlier had vanished completely, replaced by a sense of anticipation, and it gave her an unexpected energy that made her fingers move with more confidence. She began to play again, her hands now steadier and her touch more assured. The melody was no longer tentative. It had started to flow naturally, carrying a richness that surprised even her. She let the music guide her, allowing her emotions to take over. The piano was no longer just an instrument. It was an extension of her feelings, a voice that could express the courage, the fear, the joy, and the hope that words could never capture. Each chord resonated through the room, reaching every listener and drawing them closer to her story. The girl closed her eyes for a moment, letting herself be fully immersed in the music. She could feel every note, every vibration, as if the piano itself was responding to her heart. She played with an intensity she had never experienced before, pouring every ounce of her emotions into the melody. The sound began to fill the room, reaching the corners where whispers had once thrived. There was no longer room for doubt. The audience could feel the authenticity in her performance. The students who had been the harshest critics were now watching in stunned silence. Their smirks and side whispers had disappeared, replaced by wide eyes and attentive expressions. They had underestimated her, and now they were realizing the depth of her courage and the beauty of her developing talent. Teachers and parents alike leaned forward, captivated by the heartfelt music. Everyone was witnessing something remarkable, a young girl who had turned ridicule into a moment of awe. As she continued, the melody evolved. She experimented with small variations and gentle flourishes, letting the music breathe and expand. Her fingers moved with increasing confidence, flowing effortlessly from one note to another. The tremble that had been present at the beginning was gone, replaced by a graceful fluidity that reflected her inner strength. Each chord seemed to tell a story of its own, layered with emotion, resilience, and hope. She thought about all the times she had been laughed at, the moments when others had told her she wasn't good enough. Those memories, instead of weighing her down, became fuel for her performance. She played not just to prove others wrong, but to honor her own perseverance, to celebrate the courage that had brought her here. Every note carried her journey. The struggles, the practice, the quiet determination that had kept her going even when she doubted herself. The audience could sense this journey. Some were leaning forward, eyes wide, captivated by the depth of feeling in her music. Others closed their eyes, letting the sound wash over them, feeling the emotions she had poured into every chord. The room was no longer just a space for performance. It had become a place where emotions were shared, where courage and beauty intertwined in a single melody. The girl felt a connection with every person present, a silent understanding that went beyond words. She glanced at the piano keys as she played, marveling at how each note seemed to respond to her intentions. It was as if the instrument itself was alive, supporting her, amplifying her courage, and helping her convey emotions that she could not express otherwise. She realized that music had a power unlike any other. It could change the atmosphere, transform doubt into admiration, and connect people in a way that words could not. Her hands moved more freely now, creating a melody that was both delicate and strong, tender yet full of determination. She allowed herself to experiment, letting small improvisations enter the piece, giving it a unique character that reflected her own personality. She was no longer concerned about mistakes. Each note was part of the journey, part of the story she was telling, and it all felt right. The audience could feel her authenticity, and it drew them even closer. The girl noticed that the audience's reactions were changing subtly. Some were leaning forward, captivated by her skill and the emotion in her performance. Some whispered softly to each other, clearly impressed by her courage and the depth of her music. Even the students who had been the harshest critics could no longer hide their surprise. They had come expecting a failed performance or a laughable attempt, and instead, they were witnessing a moment of genuine artistry and bravery. She continued to play, losing herself in the music. The room had transformed from a place of ridicule to a sanctuary of emotions. Every note, every pause, every gentle touch of the keys carried meaning. It was as if she was speaking directly to the hearts of the listeners, telling them a story that only music could tell. Her courage had turned into expression, her fear into beauty, and the audience could sense it. They were not just hearing music. They were feeling it, experiencing it alongside her. The melody reached a point where it seemed to soar, lifting the spirits of everyone in the room. The music became a bridge between the girl and her audience, creating a shared experience of wonder, surprise, and admiration. The initial ridicule that had once filled the space was now a distant memory. The room was filled with respect, awe, and a silent acknowledgement of the girl's bravery and talent. The piano had become a voice for her emotions, and everyone could hear it clearly. She felt a rush of joy and pride as she continued playing. She had faced the laughter, the doubt, and the fear, and she had transformed it into something beautiful. Her melody was no longer just a series of notes. It was a reflection of her courage, her passion, and her heart. Each chord carried a message. That determination and authenticity could overcome any obstacle. And that true expression comes from the heart, not from skill alone. As the music began to slow, the audience remained captivated. There was a sense of anticipation, as if they were holding their breath, not wanting the moment to end. The girl's fingers danced across the keys with gentle precision, each note carrying her emotions and telling her story. She felt a deep connection with everyone in the room, as if the music had created an invisible thread linking her heart to theirs. It was a feeling she had never experienced before, and it filled her with warmth and confidence. She took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment and the power of her own courage. The melody had become more than just a performance. It had become a statement. It was a declaration of resilience, a celebration of bravery, and a testament to the beauty that comes from following one's heart. She had taken the ridicule and turned it into something inspiring, something that touched the hearts of everyone present. The girl's hands slowly lifted from the keys, allowing the last note to linger in the air. The room remained silent for a brief moment as everyone processed what they had just experienced. They had witnessed a transformation, not just in the music, but in the girl herself. She had turned fear into confidence, doubt into beauty, and ridicule into admiration. It was a moment of triumph, not only for her, but for everyone who had been present to witness it. She looked up at the audience, seeing the change in their expressions. Surprise, admiration, and respect were written on their faces. The students who had laughed before now seemed to understand the courage it took to stand there and play. Teachers and parents nodded quietly, impressed by the authenticity and emotion in her performance. It was a powerful moment, a reminder that courage and determination could create something truly extraordinary. As she stood up from the piano bench, the girl felt a deep sense of accomplishment. She had faced her fears, shared her music, and touched the hearts of those around her. The room had been transformed from a place of ridicule into a place of admiration, and she had been the catalyst for that change. She realized that this was only the beginning of her journey, that there were many more notes to play, many more stories to tell, and many more moments of courage to embrace. In that moment, she understood something important. True strength comes not from perfection, but from the willingness to try, to persevere, and to express oneself honestly. The music she had played was a reflection of her inner strength, and it had resonated with everyone in the room. She felt a sense of pride and gratitude, knowing that she had transformed fear into beauty, and that she had made a lasting impression on those who had doubted her. The girl took a final deep breath, savoring the feeling of accomplishment and connection. She had discovered the power of music, the power of courage, and the power of being true to oneself. The melody she had created would linger in the room and in the hearts of the audience, a testament to her bravery and talent. She knew that she had taken a significant step in her journey, and she was ready to continue, ready to explore the full potential of her music, and ready to inspire others with her story. The girl felt a newfound sense of courage as she continued to play. The room had grown quiet, each person captivated by the music flowing from her fingers. The laughter that had filled the air earlier was gone, replaced by an awe that hung in the room like a tangible presence. She could sense the change, feel the attention of every individual as if the music itself had drawn them closer to her, closer to the story she was telling without words. Her fingers moved with purpose, each key pressed intentionally, creating a melody that was both tender and powerful. She felt a rhythm in her heart that matched the beat of her music, a connection between herself and the piano that made the notes feel like extensions of her emotions. She had begun the day nervous and unsure, but now she was confident, fully immersed in the beauty she was creating. letting the piano speak the words she could not. Some of the students who had been laughing and mocking her earlier were now watching intently, their expression softening into admiration. They leaned forward, eyes wide, unable to look away. It was clear to them that this was no ordinary performance. It was something deeper, something genuine. Her courage, her vulnerability, and her determination were evident in every note, and the audience felt it. The room was filled with a quiet reverence, the kind that comes when people witness something truly real. As she played, the girl noticed the teachers and parents in the audience nodding quietly, impressed by her resilience and talent. They could see not only her skill but also her bravery in standing there and continuing, despite the ridicule she had faced. Each note she played carried a piece of her journey, a reflection of all the times she had been discouraged or doubted, and now those moments were transformed into beauty that everyone could appreciate. Her melody began to swell, reaching a richness and depth she had never experienced before. The music rose and fell like waves, carrying emotion with it, touching each listener in a unique way. Some closed their eyes, letting the notes wash over them, feeling the courage and sincerity in every chord. Others watched her intently, understanding that this performance was more than just playing the piano. It was a demonstration of resilience, passion, and the power of self-expression. The girl felt a thrill as she noticed the shift in the audience. The ridicule had disappeared entirely, replaced by smiles, attentive faces, and quiet whispers of amazement. She realized that she had captured their hearts without saying a word, without needing to explain herself. The music was doing it all. She had faced the doubt and fear, and now she was being recognized not only for her talent but for the courage that had carried her through those first trembling notes. Her confidence continued to grow, and the melody became even more fluid. She experimented with gentle variations, delicate flourishes that added emotion and depth to the piece. Each note felt alive, as if it were breathing with her, carrying her story to every corner of the room. She was no longer playing for the approval of others. She was playing for herself, and in doing so, she inspired everyone watching. The audience could feel her joy, her triumph, and the authenticity that radiated from her music. The girl's heart swelled with pride as she played. She had taken a risk, putting herself out there in a room full of people who had doubted her, and she had transformed that fear into something beautiful. Every note was a statement, a testament to the power of perseverance and the importance of following one's passion. She realized that the true reward was not the applause but the courage she had found within herself, and the impact her music had on those around her. Some students whispered to each other, amazed at what they were witnessing. They had expected a timid, clumsy performance, but instead, they were seeing a young girl overcome fear and share her talent in a way that moved everyone present. They were learning an important lesson, that bravery and passion could transform any moment, even one that began with ridicule. The girl's performance had become a quiet revolution, showing that determination and authenticity could capture hearts and minds. The teachers, too, were impressed. They had seen many students perform, but there was something unique about this moment. The girl was not just playing music. She was telling a story, expressing herself fully and connecting with the audience in a way that was rare and powerful. Her courage was evident in every note, and her skill, though developing, was enough to convey the depth of her emotions. It was a reminder that true talent is as much about heart as it is about technique. As the melody reached its peak, the room seemed to hold its breath. The girl played with intensity and passion, allowing her emotions to guide her. She could feel the energy of the audience, their silent encouragement, and it gave her strength. She had transformed the space from one of ridicule into one of admiration, and she could sense that this moment would be remembered by everyone present. The music had become a bridge, connecting her heart to the hearts of those who had once doubted her. The audience was captivated, leaning forward, eyes fixed on her hands as they danced across the keys. Every note carried meaning. Every pause created anticipation. They were not just listening. They were experiencing the story she was telling. The girl realized that she had achieved something extraordinary. She had taken the fear and laughter of others and turned it into something inspiring and beautiful. The room was filled with a sense of awe, and she could feel it vibrating through every corner. She continued to play, letting her emotions flow freely. The melody became richer, more expressive, carrying layers of feeling that resonated with everyone in the room. Some listeners were moved to tears, while others simply sat in stunned silence, unable to articulate the impact of what they were hearing. The girl had become more than a performer. She was a storyteller, using the piano to communicate what words could not. Her music was a language that spoke directly to the heart. As the final notes began to fade, the girl lifted her hands from the keys, allowing the sound to linger in the air. The room was silent for a moment, the audience absorbing the beauty and courage of her performance. Then slowly the first applause began. One by one, people started clapping, the sound growing louder and louder until it filled the entire room. The girl's heart raced, a mixture of relief, joy, and pride washing over her. She had faced ridicule, fear, and doubt, and now she was being recognized for her bravery and her talent. The students who had laughed earlier were clapping too, some with wide smiles, others with expressions of admiration. They had underestimated her, but now they understood the depth of her courage and the power of her music. The teachers and parents were on their feet, applauding with enthusiasm, impressed by her resilience and skill. It was a moment of triumph, not just for the girl, but for everyone who had witnessed the transformation from fear to beauty. She took a deep breath, feeling the warmth of the applause and the appreciation in the room. Her journey had not been easy, but it had led to this moment of recognition and connection. She realized that the laughter she had faced was not a barrier but a challenge that had pushed her to rise above, to play with courage, and to share her heart through music. The applause was a reflection of her perseverance, and it filled her with a sense of accomplishment and joy. The girl smiled as she looked around at the faces in the audience. She could see surprise, admiration, and respect in their eyes. The students who had doubted her were no longer laughing. They were inspired. The teachers and parents were impressed by her courage and authenticity. It was a moment of validation, a reminder that determination and self-belief could overcome fear and doubt. She had not only shared her music, but also left an impact on everyone present. As she stepped away from the piano, she felt a sense of pride and hope for the future. She had discovered something important: the power of expressing oneself honestly and the ability to inspire others through courage and passion. The room, once filled with ridicule and doubt, had become a place of admiration and respect. She had turned a moment of fear into a moment of triumph, and it was a lesson she would carry with her for the rest of her life. The girl knew that this was just the beginning of her journey. She had faced her fears, shared her music, and touched the hearts of those around her. The recognition she received was a reminder of what she could achieve when she believed in herself. She had proven that courage and passion could transform doubt into admiration, ridicule into respect, and fear into beauty. The experience would stay with her forever, inspiring her to continue her journey with confidence, resilience, and a heart full of music. After the applause had settled, the girl took a moment to breathe and reflect on what had just happened. The room, once filled with laughter and doubt, was now filled with admiration and quiet conversation about her performance. She felt a warmth in her chest, a mix of relief, pride, and joy. She had faced fear, ridicule, and doubt, and she had not only survived but had transformed those feelings into something beautiful that had touched everyone present. She walked away from the piano, feeling the smooth floor beneath her feet and the beating of her heart, still racing from the intensity of the moment. People were looking at her differently now, their eyes filled with respect and admiration. Some students who had laughed at her before smiled and nodded quietly, acknowledging the courage it took to stand there and continue despite the fear. Teachers and parents approached, offering words of praise and encouragement, recognizing not just her talent but her bravery. The girl realized that this moment would stay with her forever. It was more than a performance. It was a turning point, a defining moment in her journey. She had discovered a strength within herself that she had not known existed, a courage that could overcome fear and doubt. She had learned that mistakes did not define her, that ridicule could be transformed into motivation, and that true expression came from the heart. This understanding filled her with confidence and a sense of purpose. As she walked through the hallway later, she noticed students whispering to each other and glancing at her with newfound respect. Some nodded or smiled, showing that they had learned a lesson from her courage. The girl felt a sense of connection with them, knowing that her actions had left a positive mark. She thought about the times she had doubted herself, the moments she had considered giving up, and realized that those experiences had prepared her for this victory. Each challenge she had faced had built the resilience that allowed her to shine. She returned home that evening, her mind replaying the performance over and over. She could still hear the sound of the piano, the melody she had created and the way the room had responded. She remembered the initial laughter, the uncertainty, the fear, and then the transformation, the moment when her courage took over, and she began to express herself fully. She felt grateful for every step of that journey, understanding that each moment, even the difficult ones, had led her to this point. The girl thought about the future and what she wanted to achieve. She realized that the experience had given her more than just confidence. It had given her a sense of purpose. She wanted to continue playing, to explore the full potential of her music and to share it with others. She understood that her talent was not only about skill, but about the heart and courage behind it. This realization motivated her to practice more, to take risks, and to embrace opportunities to perform in front of others. Over the next few weeks, she noticed a change in herself and in those around her. She walked with her head held higher, feeling more confident in her abilities and more willing to try new things. She no longer feared ridicule or doubt, because she knew that courage and authenticity could overcome them. Others noticed the change too. Her friends and classmates seemed more respectful, some even inspired to pursue their own passions despite their fears. The girl's actions had created a ripple effect, showing that bravery and dedication could influence others in meaningful ways. She continued to practice at home, experimenting with new melodies and exploring different ways to express herself through music. Each session brought her joy and a sense of growth. She remembered how the piano had felt like a friend during her performance, guiding her and supporting her emotions. Now it was a source of comfort and inspiration, a partner in her journey. She found herself thinking about new ways to share her music, imagining the smiles, the surprises, and the connection she could create with every note she played. The girl also thought about the importance of perseverance and self-belief. She remembered the initial laughter, the whispers, and the moments of doubt, and realized that those experiences had strengthened her. They had taught her that challenges were opportunities in disguise, that every fear faced was a chance to grow, and that true courage was about continuing even when it was difficult. She felt proud of herself, not just for the music she had played, but for the bravery she had shown in standing up, facing the ridicule, and expressing her heart. She began to notice opportunities to inspire others. She shared her experiences with classmates who were hesitant to try new things, offering encouragement and understanding. She reminded them that it was normal to feel fear and doubt, but that those feelings did not have to hold them back. Her story became an example, showing that courage, passion, and determination could transform challenges into moments of triumph. She realized that her performance had not only impacted the audience in that room, but could continue to influence others through the way she carried herself and shared her experiences. The girl's journey also strengthened her understanding of the power of expression. She realized that music was not just about notes or technical skill. It was about communication, emotion, and connection. Each note she played carried meaning, and when she played from the heart, it had the power to reach others in ways words could not. She felt a deep appreciation for the piano, for the ability to express herself fully, and for the moments when music could bring people together, inspire them, and leave a lasting impact. As she looked forward to future performances, she felt excitement and confidence. She knew that she would face new challenges and moments of doubt, but she was prepared to meet them with courage. She understood that the path would not always be easy, but the joy of expressing herself, the connection she could create with others, and the satisfaction of overcoming fear made every effort worthwhile. Her journey had taught her that success was not just about recognition, but about the growth, courage, and authenticity she brought to every experience. The girl also began to see herself in a new light. She understood that she was capable of more than she had imagined, that her courage could inspire others, and that her music could be a powerful tool for communication and expression. She felt a sense of empowerment, knowing that her actions could create positive change, not just for herself, but for those around her. This realization filled her with hope, motivation, and a desire to continue exploring her talents. She thought about the audience, the people who had laughed, the ones who had doubted her, and the ones who had admired her. She realized that their reactions, though varied, had contributed to her growth. Each response, whether ridicule or encouragement, had been a part of her journey, teaching her resilience, patience, and the value of self-expression. She felt grateful for the experience, understanding that every moment had helped shape her into the person she was becoming. the girl's story became one of inspiration and reflection. She shared her experiences with friends and family, encouraging them to pursue their passions, face their fears, and embrace their own journeys. She reminded them that courage was not the absence of fear, but the choice to continue despite it, and that authenticity and perseverance could create beauty and connection in ways that were truly remarkable. Her journey had shown her that the smallest steps, taken with heart and determination, could lead to profound and lasting impact. As she practiced more and continued to explore her music, the girl carried the lessons of that performance with her. She remembered the fear, the ridicule, and the doubt, and she remembered how she had transformed those feelings into courage, expression, and connection. She understood that her journey was ongoing, that each new challenge was an opportunity to grow, and that her music could continue to touch hearts, inspire others, and reflect the bravery and passion within her. In the end, she realized that the true reward was not the applause or recognition, but the courage she had found within herself, the connections she had created through her music, and the knowledge that she could face any challenge with determination and authenticity. The piano, once a source of fear and uncertainty, had become a symbol of growth, courage, and self-expression. Her journey had begun with laughter and doubt, but it had ended in triumph, inspiration, and the understanding that bravery and passion could create something truly extraordinary.